Hello, everyone. This is Nagashri, your facilitator for today. Welcome to the Founder in Climate series for Women in Cleantech 2026. I am really excited to kick off this series for this new year. And Jing, if you can move to the next slide. For all of those guys that don't know about Women in Clean Tech and about the Entrepreneurship Committee, I'd like to give a quick intro. So those of you that don't know, Women in Clean Tech is a nonprofit that is helping support women across clean tech and sustainability. For many years, we have more than 2,000 members across 15 different countries, and we support 4 main pillars here in bringing up the parity of women within clean tech and sustainability. We also organize events to promote connections and bring forward thought leadership in individual fields that are there, as well as creating local communities. About the Entrepreneurship Committee, it is kind of aligned with what WCS does, and we are supporting women entrepreneurs and founders within clean tech and sustainability to bring forward parity and their ideas to the forefront. In terms of this program, the Founder Series, this is the second year that we're bringing forward, programs to support the founders to excel in their endeavors. Next slide, Ching. Yeah, so what to expect in the Founder Series are we last year we did a workshop and an office hour. We had back-to-back, 6 sessions, which were deep dive on how to build cap tables, legal aspects of setting up, the digital aspect of, marketing and such. And we had a great response. And so this year, we've kind of divided them up into workshops, fireside chats with investors, with founders, and then a networking time where you guys can talk to each other and understand what is going well and what are the challenges. So with that, next slide. What we have up and coming today are, speaker Kara Elter. I'll let her introduce herself. But today's is from problem to market. Like, what is the Fundable story? Essentially, like, how do we build a really great storyline for pitching, online, offline, whatever that is. What to expect in the coming few weeks are we're going to have a fireside chat with CC Zhao on a VC perspective. Then we'll have a networking event. And then we're going to have some like, how do we show proof of traction and financial wins? And another fireside chat with our past pitch competition winner and networking event followed by that. And so this is kind of our Q1 and, lining up to the pitch competition that we have. And then we have a similar kind of a lineup for after. So with that, next slide, Jing. Here are the speakers for these few lineups. And you can find this on our web page for the Founder Series on which ones are lined up. Next one. Yeah, and I'll give a quick intro about myself. I'm Nagashri Manwadkar. I'm a board member at Women in Clean Tech. I am also the chair of the Entrepreneurship Committee. I also bring my own passion to this committee because I am a founder. Gaia Force is a platform that is helping young professionals land climate jobs. And in my past experience, I've been in the clean tech for the last 15 years. I'm currently at Uplight as a partnership manager and supporting EV and EVSC enrollments into utility programs. And my past experiences have been at Tesla, kind of leading business and operations, helping scale Powerwall and Solar Roof. And prior to that, I have a ton of experience working on energy efficient buildings and building ground up. So with that, I would love to pass the baton to Kara and let her introduce herself and take it from then. Take it away, Kara.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. So nice to be here with all of you. Before I get into the presentation that I have prepared, I'd love to just see everyone. I know some of you are off camera. If you want to come on camera, I would love that. If you want to put your Zoom in gallery mode so we can all see each other for just a moment. I always feel like that's especially with, we're talking about storytelling, we're talking about your personal brand, and so I want to see everyone's face. And thank you for being here. I'd also love to know where you're at in your own journey. So let's just see by show of hands, who is a founder currently working on a project? Okay, great. And who is actively raising money right now or thinking about raising money soon? Okay, good. Um, and is this your first money? So are you pre-seed or seed stage? So this is the first money. You haven't raised money. You have no experience raising money pre-seed. Okay, anyone seed stage? You have a little bit of money, maybe friends and family. Okay, Caroline. Anyone later than seed stage? Series A, Series B? Okay. So, and then for those of you who didn't raise hands around being a founder, are you thinking of being a founder? Are you just kind of interested in storytelling? Okay. So, great. Nice to see all of you. And then before we get into it, I have one last question, which is, where are you stuck? What are you hoping to get out of today? Does anyone want to maybe come off mute and just share one or two words of what you're looking for or where you really feel like you're in the dark around fundraising, storytelling, value proposition?
If I could, hi everyone.
Yes.
I'd love to learn about the pitfalls more because the wins, there's so many best practices, there's so many that we can adapt. But what are the typical pitfalls because we think we do well, but then we run right into it?
Great, Caroline. Thanks. Anyone else? Allison, did you come off mute?
Me, Allison?
Yeah. I just see that you're not muted, so I was like, maybe you want to say something.
No, I'm actually also on the board as well, but I actually support a lot of VCs to help their founders. So I'm here to learn from you, Kara, a little bit on
Amazing.
some of the advice that you can give founders.
Great. Okay. And then just to help us all meet each other, I would also like to see, if you don't want to come off mute right now and say something, that's fine. But if you want to put into the chat your name and the name of your company or project, if you have it, and maybe one line around what your company is. So, the value prop or just whatever you have so far. Would love to see that in the chat, and I will get started. And then this is going to be also very interactive. I do have some slides, but I prefer workshops where we can, grab real examples from you. If any of you have some slides already or a pitch deck that you're brave enough to share and we can real-time workshop and make your story better, I would love to do that. If not, we can just do Q&A. Okay. I'm going to open up this chat so that I can see what you all put.
And
And
folks, just so you know, we're also recording this, and we will share that with you after the event, so you can go back to any of those wonderful areas that Kara's going to cover later as well.
okay, great. So let's get right into it. Okay, so maybe you've seen my bio already. You know a little bit about who I am and what to expect, but my name's Kara. I'm a brand strategist. I've been identifying as a brand strategist for my entire career, nearly 20 years in brand strategy. And I'll break down a little bit more of what that means. I've been a co-founder of my own projects twice. More if you want to count the many dance companies and small businesses that I've started and run. And then I also have been the first head of marketing or CMO at four different startup projects or four different projects. So I really am very comfortable in this 0 to 1 storytelling or brand building phase. And I also am serial entrepreneur and have worn that hat many, many times. Now I'm on the venture side of things, and I'll talk a bit more about that. But when kind of distilling everything I've done in my career and where I would say my sort of superpower is, or what I really firmly believe is the power of brand to drive your growth, to bring you users, to bring you followers, to bring you investors while your product is catching up. So maybe you haven't perfected that product market fit yet, but I believe in the power of positioning market fit. And that's really what pitching is all about. It's storytelling, it's connecting with your audience and getting them to believe in you before the product is there yet. And then, of course, the money then helps that product reach helps you reach product market fit. I've seen this in the two startups that I've worked on founding, where I built a brand very intentionally before our product was really ready and got us from that point of zero, absolutely nothing, from scratch to funding, thousands, hundreds of thousands of users, millions in revenue. And so the brand has been really that driver. And so over my career, I've had the privilege of working with many, many different brands in various roles, consulting, full time and startups. I've done a lot of pitch practice. I've done pitch practice for Techstars, serving as a mentor with Techstars, helping startups pitch. And then also with our most recent accelerator at the venture fund where I am now, we launched an accelerator and I've done a lot of pitch practice. So not only kind of the larger storytelling of go-to-market in-house at a brand or consulting with some of, the world's largest brands on a global scale, but also the smallest startups, figuring out, who are you, why do you matter, and how are you going to tell that story. And now, as I mentioned, I'm on the venture side. So I work at SE Ventures for 3 years. I've been the head of marketing and community at SE Ventures. We are based in the Bay Area, and we're a billion plus venture capital fund backed by the global company Schneider Electric, the most sustainable company in the world. We're stage agnostic, so we invest pre-seed through our accelerator program all the way through Series A, B, C, E, D, E. And we specifically invest in energy tech, sustainability, grid resiliency, data centers, also industrial tech. We have a growing emphasis around physical AI, which is really interesting to us, and then enterprise AI. Maybe you've seen our accelerator program. We were a judge at the last pitch competition last year and will be again this year. So we're very involved in the kind of climate and energy tech ecosystem in Silicon Valley. And we have a growing portfolio of 60 plus companies worldwide. We actually also have a presence in Europe and in India. And so in my role, I get to focus on not only the brand of SE Ventures and events and engaging activities with founders, but also the portfolio, especially our earlier stage companies, and helping them with their storytelling, with their press, whatever they might need. Okay, so I mentioned brand strategy, what I believe in, and I think it all comes down to, your brand is the reason to believe. Your brand is why customers show up. I mean, of course, your product, your offering, your solution, but who you are and that story is one of the most powerful tools you have, especially at the early stage. And for early stage founders, you are the brand. I can't emphasize this enough. When we look at pitching and we'll look at all of the, elements of your story, but really what it all comes down to, what investors care about at the pre-seed and seed stage is you. Do I believe you? Do I believe that you are the one to bring this solution to market? Do I want to be your partner for the next 10 years or plus? Do I actually think that you have something that no one else has? And so, anyone can have an idea. I think it said in the description of this workshop, anyone can have an idea. Ideas are a dime a dozen. But only you can actually build this idea into a scalable business. That's what you have to convince me of. Anyone can have an idea, but how are you actually going to bring this idea to market? What do you know about the problem, about the market, about your technology? Do you have a patent? Do you have something that's a defensible moat, proprietary around what you're tackling that makes me feel like I have conviction in you as a person? And the reason that that is so important to investors at the earliest stage is that, you might sit here today and tell me, this is what my business model is going to be. This is where we're going to be in 10, 4 years and 5 years and 6 years. This is how we're going to go to market. This is what our customers want. And I know as a seed investor that all of that is going to change. Most of it is going to change. So much, in my businesses as well that I've started, you pivot and then you pivot again and then you pivot again. And so that's why it really comes down to founders and team, and the market size. Is this an interesting investable market, fundable market? And do I believe that this person, this team has what it takes to weather all of the storms that you're going to ultimately encounter? So I broke down a typical slide playbook for you, or storytelling framework. And this is, I mean, you can open up ChatGPT and ask, like, what should be in my pitch deck. Like, at this point, I feel like information on the internet about what makes a good story and, how to craft a fundable story is so abundant. And that's why I really wanted to focus more on the workshopping real pitfalls that you're having. But, of course, this wouldn't be a workshop about pitching without some type of what to have in that storyline, and why. So I broke it down with the slide, but also the main question that you need to be answering on that slide. So first, personally, for early stage, I like to see team slide right away. Some people put it, much further in the presentation. I think it depends on you, your style, maybe what your solution is, and how strong your background is. But first, we want to know, like, who are you? And like I just mentioned, why you? So not just who are you, but why? Why are you the only person in the world that could work on this project, and why should I trust you with my money? So that's your team slide. And we'll go through each of these slides as well, and I'll talk a bit more about, when you're thinking about team, what do you want to have on that team slide, or who do you want to have on your team if you're still assembling a team? I'm just also like checking on the chat to make sure there's no questions. Okay. And feel free to raise your hand, because I can't see everybody while I'm presenting, unfortunately. But if you do have a question on something, jump in. Like, I'm not precious with this story flow. I'd love to deviate and hear from you if you have a question midway through. Okay, so first team, who are you? Then it's, what problem are you solving? And that would be your problem slide. Usually you see that at the beginning of the story. You introduce yourself, the issue, the problem is, nobody, founders get hung up all the time on pitching, and and they struggle to raise money because they don't know how to pitch effectively. Okay, that's the problem, right? So then how are you solving it? I'm solving it today by breaking down common pitfalls and best practices for pitching so that everyone attending this workshop can leave, and know exactly what to do. So then you want to get right into the solution. And depending on if you have a product, or where you're at with your product, you might also have a product slide, or, screenshots of your MVP, or a breakdown of how your product actually works. I like to say, don't go too deep into all the details of your product. Most likely no one cares as much as you do about all those details, and there's a second conversation or a product demo to be had with investors where you do that. So in your initial storytelling, or your pitch deck that you're putting together, just really focus on clear solution, and make sure that that solution is articulated in a way that it tells me why you're solving the problem that you just laid out. Then why now? Why this? And how big is the opportunity? So we want to see the market opportunity. And this is especially important. Market size. Is this a big market? Is this a real market? And if you capture just a sliver of that market, is that still big enough to matter? Is that still enough to make me returns as an investor? And I know we're talking about women in clean tech, climate, sustainability. A lot of your business may have, a mission around sustainability, but the hard truth is that if you're raising venture capitalists, if it, maybe if it's an impact fund, the story would be different, but venture capitalists are still going to want to see market size and financial returns. You still have to position your company as a business that is a venture backable business. And so, the showing the market opportunity is very important there. And the next question is also very important, which is how do you make money? So that's your business model. You don't need to go so deep into the business model and all the various details because again, that's going to change most likely. But we need to know how are you making money from this idea? And then the next is how will you get customers? And so that's your go-to-market strategy. And this is again most likely going to change, but I need to see that you've given some thought to your go-to-market. And then how do you know that customers actually want this? So that would be traction. Maybe you have done, you have an MVP and you've done some testing, or maybe there's competitor examples where you can show that customers want this type of solution, or there's other examples out there that are similar to what you're building that demonstrate that customers want what you're building. Maybe you've done customer interviews or research where you can actually show, I interviewed these 10 target customers, and this is what they've said about their pain points. So this is sort of a, market traction slash customer pain point. And then who else is doing this? I'm going to ask, okay, so you say this is a market that maybe I haven't heard of before. I'm not so familiar with it. Customers want this solution. Well, is there anyone else that's already done this or any other competitors that are doing it now? And I'll get into this, but it's if you say, oh no, nobody's ever done this, that's actually a red flag. Could be a red flag for investors because again, especially if it's a nascent market, then it brings up a lot of questions of like, well, is it a real market and do customers actually want it? Because if it was, wouldn't there already be competitors? And we don't necessarily want to see that there are zero competitors. It's healthy to see that there are competitors in the space already. You shouldn't be afraid of that, but you still need to show like why are you better positioned to win, or why are you positioned to win a slice of that very large market? You don't have to, you don't have to completely demolish all of your competition. You just need to have a very clear moat of what you're actually going to be, targeting within that. And then the last piece is how much money do you need and how will you use it? So that's sort of the ask, kind of going into the financial piece of it. You don't need to lay out your entire financial projections in an initial pitch deck or a story, but you should have something where it's very concrete. Okay, we're raising, 2 million seed and where the use of funds is going to be XYZ, over this time period. Any questions on this storyline breakdown? No
Hey,
questions so far.
Kara,
Okay.
I have a
Yeah.
question. Is there a reason to deviate from this? Like, have you, in your preview, you must have seen many others, and this typically fits what most people provide. But is there a reason? Because I know VCs have so little time. Like, how do we provide a concise version, like 2 slide or a 3 slide version of this? And I don't know if you're going to cover that.
So you're saying how do you simplify to be fewer slides?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think, I'm talking about sort of a typical slide deck for your kind of complete presentation is I like to encourage founders, 10 to 12 slides. I think VCs are very used to seeing decks that hit all these points of this size. So I wouldn't say that you need to have a two slide deck, right? You might want to have a one pager or maybe it's just in the body of an email, but you can still hit on these questions. And actually, I would love for all of you to start practicing. The reason why I put the questions on the right and not just team slide, problem slide, solution, product, because those are like what you see when you look at what are the slides that I need. But actually, you can, forget about the slides. They don't need to be individual slides. It's still in the storytelling. Who are you? Why you? What problem are you solving? And this can be your elevator pitch. Well, I mean, it's probably a little long for an elevator pitch, but this can be your quick, like let's say you have, 2 minutes with an investor at a happy hour. You can run through most of these questions in a narrative, at least the most important ones, right? Like why you, what problem are you solving? How are you solving it? What's the opportunity? And then probably a follow-up question. How do you make money? You know, how are you getting customers kind of thing? And without it needing to be a 12 slide deck. And so I would practice, once you've built out your narrative and you focus just on, like, use these questions on the right as your outline to craft the story. And then you can slice and dice it almost into different versions of your pitch because you don't always get like the half an hour time slot with an investor to run through the slides. And if you do, by the way, only have half an hour, you should get through your slides in 12 minutes tops, I believe, so that you can have plenty of time for talking. Like one mistake, and I'll get into mistakes in a second, that I see founders make is, let's say you have 30 minutes with an investor, you pitch for 30 minutes, or you have an hour with an investor, you pitch for an hour. And then they're like, okay, well, that, most of it's going to be questions. Yeah, I see
Couple of hands
Allison
there.
and Vanessa. I don't know if that answered.
I'll start. I'm just putting you on the spot a bit, Kara, but is there anything that stood out in a slide deck that you've seen? Things that just resonate with you that have stuck in your mind for a long time, where you think, well, that's really unique. They've done that differently, or examples you can provide. I know it's probably hard to draw on that, but I'd be keen to know
I
if
know
there's
it's
any.
so hard because there's so many, like all just convoluted together. Let me think. Hmm. I'm trying to think of like unique pitches because I would say like this is kind of like the check mark, the it's like your basic slides. Make sure you check these boxes, right? If you aren't covering one of these things in your storyline, then probably you're going to get asked about it, right? So I think this is a good framework. But absolutely, that question earlier from Nagashri about like, when do you deviate? It's completely fine to bring in your own creativity as well to this. It doesn't have to be like your slide doesn't have to look like this. I think one place where you can show creativity is in sort of the um, like the like showing the solution and the product demo or the customer, like when I pitched my company on stage at Techstars in 2014, and we started our pitch with a video of some of the events we had done with users, like showing kind of the like real the real market traction through a video that was very engaging and very sort of like showcasing our brand. That was one way where we kind of like hooked attention. Or you might have like some of these robotics companies that we're seeing, right? They have videos of their robots doing things, or I mean, that's kind of more in the product demo, but it's like more engaging because you don't need to see so many like text on a slide, if you just get like one video could explain a lot of things around like whatever if it's the problem or the solution. Um, but video doesn't always like send well, so you have to make sure that it's easy to send. It's not like so heavy and you're trying too hard to like you don't spend too much time trying to be super, super creative before the basics are there.
Yeah, I
I
have
know
one example, Allison, that I can say in one statement. Our last pitch competition winner, Kara Bard, had a very strong statement. Her company is making ammonia more sustainable and low cost, and so her statement was, it is this less carbon intensive and costs less. So that gave a bang, right? Like that's the problem that they're solving,
It's
and so
clear.
people do it different ways. But I'd like to take Vanessa and Elaine your questions as well for Kara.
Uh, I can go next. First of all, Kara, thank you for walking us through this. My question is, if during this presentation you want to say discuss additional value to the investor, for instance, maybe like a specific relationship or some additional value they get beyond returns, where would you do that? And would investors ever expect you to do that to I don't know, demonstrate value to them beyond just future expected return?
Hmm. When you say value to investor, but give me an example. You said specific
Like
relationships.
for instance, say if your investor is trying to create a foothold in a specific industry, maybe saying, okay,
Mm,
this would give you a certain brand name, or maybe the investor has another company that does similar work, and having a partnership between the two of them would be very helpful. I'm just thinking of like different potential benefits.
Yeah, I mean, maybe something like that I would put after the ask or kind of part of the ask is sort of your closing like and maybe an opportunity to customize your presentation to that
Mhm.
specific investor to say like look, I really want to work with you, like this is what we're raising, this is what the round is, sort of like in the voiceover as well. And I specifically want to work with you for these reasons. And I think that, you would want to work with me for these reasons, kind of a thing. And it sort of it could open up the
Mhm.
conversation into, because another thing to remember, if you're pre-seed or seed, the investors you choose, it's very important. You should be
Mhm.
looking for smart capital and folks that you want to work with, folks that you want to call, at midnight when you're panicking about something, and people that you feel like are going to be in your court, your biggest advocates, no matter what. And so it's relationship. It's a relationship. And that's
Mhm.
honestly what investors are also looking for. So that's why I say, like, here's the checklist, but the most
Mhm.
important thing on this, and I have a couple more slides, but who are like your team, who are you, and connecting with your investor and being someone that they want to fund. And then, the reason that repeat entrepreneurs sometimes have an easier time raising is because they've built authentic relationships with investors that know them, that trust them, that like working with them, that have seen how they navigate challenges, and then they're more willing to give them money, just person plus idea. They don't need to do as much pitching or validation because the person part is so well vetted. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, Eleanor.
Yeah, so I've put together my pitch deck, and I was realizing that here, instead of business model, to stick to the 10 slides, I put like basically a strategy slide, like how we're going to get there in the next 12 months. And so revenue is kind of, it's not implied, it's explicit, but it's shown as opposed to like a large picture of business model being like, this is our timeline. Like in 0 to 3 months, we're talking with customers, we're getting those pilot conversations set up. And then once those pilot conversations are set up, then we hit revenue and then we scale. And this is what kind of this like SaaS revenue looks like. So it's interesting because I guess in previous sort of like pitch competitions I've done, business model always looks like that, like
Yeah,
hockey stick.
timeline.
And I don't, I'm not really in a place to like give it a linear projection through time. It would more
Mhm.
so be like 0 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 12, you know? So I was wondering
Well,
what investors see for
yeah,
these chunks as opposed to these like smaller iterative times.
I would say that they are two different things. So timeline is also important. Roadmap is kind of
Mhm.
like, and then also sometimes you see the timeline. Sometimes you see it in the kind of in the ask, like use of
Mhm.
funds. How, what are we going to do? Use of funds is often broken down as a timeline because it's, we're going to give you money today, and then what are you going to do for the next 1 to 2 years until you get to kind of like
Mhm.
revenue or your next round. Um, and and also, product roadmap sometimes is something you show when you're looking at product, and that's also a timeline. I would say that that's slightly different than business model though, because you could have a timeline saying we're going to get from, 0 to 3 months, we're going to get pilot customers, and then at this point we're going to have this many customers, but you still haven't answered the question of how do you make money? Are those customers, what is the revenue model, right? Is it
Yeah.
it's
I guess
SaaS? Okay,
because
so
it's
they're
like
paying.
because it's SaaS and it's like one word and it's like kind of a known business model. It's just
Yeah, you just maybe
I
say
think
this is the price, this is the pricing or this is the pay. Like it could be voiceover on that slide. And
uh-huh.
I think there's a lot of liberties. That's why I didn't like I have an example we'll go through right now, but I didn't say this is what it needs to look like, this slide, because it doesn't, you can look however. I mean, I've seen decks that are only text that have raised millions of dollars. I think it really comes down to like, of course, it's nice to have a beautiful slide deck that you feel proud about, but it's more in the content and I think more in the actual proof, like what you've done and who you are, what you know about the market that is going to ultimately sell investors.
Okay. So really focusing on that traction side.
Um, yeah, I would say like, you know, and also the hockey stick with SaaS. I mean, I think investors are going to want to see the projections for business model that show that it's a VC backable business, that you have thought about metrics of scale. But again, like I mentioned before, I think all, smart early stage investors are also going to know that a lot of things are going to change about that business model. Um, and yeah, a SaaS business model is like pretty standard. You don't have to like reinvent the wheel there.
Yeah, yeah. So if you were me, would you keep that business model slide there that kind of explains a SaaS business? Or would you kind of incorporate it into other slides? I guess I'm just having a hard time keeping it to 10 slides because even like the
Well, it doesn't
traction
have to
slide
keep to 10 slides. It doesn't
Mhm.
have to like there's no like hard rule saying oh only 10 slides. Oh, but if it maybe it's for a pitch competition, then maybe there's
Yeah.
rules around that. Um, it's hard for me to give you an answer without actually seeing the slide and what it covers. If we have time, maybe you could pull it up and we could all look at it, give some
Yeah.
thoughts on it.
I
Um,
would recommend,
I,
Kara, that we continue with your presentation, and then if we have time left, or you guys can meet offline. We also have an opportunity for the networking event if Kara, you want to join us.
sure. Yeah, I think what I'll say about it is just make sure that you're hitting the point, even if it's in voiceover of, sort of the business model. And also, a lot of those like deeper financial docs, get sent afterwards or as part of your investor kit. So the pitch deck doesn't need to do everything. And your kind of in your story, your narrative doesn't have to do anything. And another thing I'll say about this is it's also trial and error. So, it's good to maybe think about when you have your deck together, have some friendly investor pitches or informational pitches, where you're just kind of going through the deck and then see what's missing through the questions that get asked. Like don't put maybe your your most important investor target first because like anything you're going to learn, you're going to experiment, you're going to edit, you're going to get feedback and ask like was there anything from this that you wish would be better or that's missing. I mean typically when raising like when I would pitch, it's like you're pitching over and over and over again. Everywhere you go, you're pitching. Every event you go to, you're pitching. So there's a lot of opportunities to learn. And I think good founders, like of course, what makes you a good founder is your ability to iterate on your product and your business through customer feedback. So think of your deck in your fundable story the same way. You're going to have one version of it that's a draft, that's an MVP, good enough to get out there and start collecting feedback. And then once you're in market with investors or friends or family or whoever, you're going to start getting feedback on that storyline, and you can make changes to the deck. Right? It's not a set thing. So you can also iterate on your story. I want to go through because we have let's see, some of this. Only about 10 more minutes left, and I want there to be plenty of time for questions. So I'm going to go through some kind of like pros and cons or best practices and then the pitfalls that was asked. And then I do have an example of a real deck that I just want to quickly click through, and then we'll take any more questions. Okay. And question from Caroline, would the deck for a pitch competition be the same as one for investors? Um, it's I don't know if that was a question for Eleanor or for me, but I think it all depends. Like pitch competitions might have a very specific like ask or outline of what they're looking for. If a pitch competition is to investors, then you probably want it to be your investor deck because the investors on the judging panel are gonna be looking for the same things. And so I would say, yeah, it's your investor deck, but it's a very like tight one and also performative one in some ways, right? You're on stage, it's so the show factor, like the big sort of flashy statements matter more. Sometimes you have a pre-read deck and a pitch, like a presentation deck that can look different. And so less is more when you're thinking about slides for anything where you're live presenting it. So what do investors want to see? And what do I want to see if I'm looking at a pitch deck? So first is clear, focused value prop. I think Nagashri said, what stood out to her from the pitch winner last year was, one slide with a very clear statement of what the business does. That always stands out to me. It's like if you can distill that down into one very clear, very specific sentence that I can almost like take a screenshot of and then remember, that's really important. It also shows focus. So founders at the earliest stage have a tendency to ramble on and on and on and on about how great everything you're doing is. And you have a zillion ideas that keep you up at night. And you could do this, you could do that, you could do that. Oh, there's this other thing, this other market. My customer also wants this thing from us. And the feedback I always give is you can't do all these things. Do one thing very well. And when you do that one thing very well, maybe you can do one or two more things, but investors need to see that one thing that you plan to do very well and that focus. And so that comes from like your clarity of vision and value proposition. What is your industry expertise? Or what you might hear called what is your unfair advantage? Why are you going to win? What do you know about the market? Or, what experience do you have in this market that nobody else has? And that also kind of goes into the next thing, which is you might hear this investor speak. What is your defensible moat? So, is it like a patent that you have? Is it your very particular go to market? Is it, something in your product? Like, why couldn't the competition basically just build exactly what you're building and take you out in an instant? So you have to have some type of defensible moat from your competition. Is the market large? We want to see a large market size, want to see a believable large market. Urgency, like why now? Why is it now the moment to build what you're building? So a sense of urgency is also, a good thing. And then conviction in what you're building and authenticity. And this comes through in getting to know you as a human and your pitch. Again, going back to that idea that like brand is your reason to believe, you are the brand. Like I need to believe you and I need to believe that you live and breathe this solution and have your own extremely strong conviction, because being an early stage founder is like the hardest thing you can do, and you're going to get tested and shaken around all the time. So you need to have this resolve, and in what you're doing, that I can believe in. Okay, so now some pitfalls to avoid. The first thing that I see sometimes is just, I know nervousness is fine and it's natural. And it's also fine to say, hey, I'm really nervous right now, to kind of help shake up the nerves. But being over scripted, it's not like the worst thing you can do, but it shoots yourself in the foot, because I'm trying to get to know you. I want to know who you are. I want to know your vibe. I want to know what it's like working with you. I want to see you have a natural expertise in the space. If it feels like you're reading from speaker notes, instantly you lose connection and you lose that ability to like portray yourself as an expert. And so I would say don't worry about it being perfect, but don't over script it and don't read speaker notes. Too much what versus why. And the next few are sort of related. So another issue is, and trying to say way too much on a slide or at any given point, so much that your actual value prop gets lost. So thinking about the what, because we tend to be very stuck in what at the early stage, because you're the one thinking about that. I'm building this and it does this, and here's all the amazing features that I've been spending, weeks and weeks on with my developers, and here's everything it does. And forgetting to actually talk about why that matters. Why does that matter to your customers? You don't need to tell me about every single product feature, actually. There will be a product demo for that. I don't care in the beginning. I just want to know that your product solves a very particular need and why it matters to your customers and why it should matter to me. Also, going into way too much detail about really anything, but especially business model or kind of those things I outlined that are probably going to change, because investors know that it's going to change. And so, the feedback I also have, talked to my team about is sometimes that's also seen as kind of a red flag. If you have too much conviction over your business model, we're absolutely going to be charging this much in 3 years and this, it's like, it maybe shows sort of just kind of an over, like, I want you to be smart around what you don't know and have an ability to adapt and modify, and like resilience, right? I'm looking for resilience in a founder, not necessarily like over researching exactly what your business model is going to be, because you don't know. Same thing with competition. I think a pitfall that we see sometimes is that founders will dismiss, and I mentioned this before, dismiss competition or bash the competition, and you don't need to do that. Like, you can, it's fine that there's competition. It's good that there's competitors. It shows a healthy market, and you don't need to say that there aren't any, or that they're not. What you do need to say is how you're different and how you have an advantage. And then just kind of like overall pitfalls, if you have a very generic story, I think that there's nothing to like really grab onto. And so you need to have your specifics. You need to show focus, stats, market expertise. So avoid kind of really large statements of generalization that aren't actually rooted in anything. And then you're going to get tough questions. Investors are going to push on you. And something that I see as a red flag, or that, sometimes founders will feel challenged, or like they're being shot down in some way. And then your like defensiveness will kick in, and you might get a little like feel like you're on the reactive side of a question. And so practice how you respond to questions, because 30 minutes with an investor, like I said, 12 to 15 minutes pitching, 15 minutes answering questions. That's half the pitch, is, the way you answer questions. And the way you answer questions shows poise, expertise, ability to think critically on the spot and also not get, defensive. And it's showing the investor like how you are to work, how you're going to be to work with. Maybe that investor's going to have a seat on your board. What are you going to be like, in contentious board meetings? So again, you are the brand. How you show up is what they're funding. And then being unprepared, mostly for that question part. Yes, of course, it feels awkward if a founder is like stumbling their way through her pitch deck, but mostly it's, making sure that you know the answers to those questions. And if an investor asks a question that you don't feel fully prepared to answer, it's also okay to say, that's a really good question. I don't feel like I have the exact answer in this moment for you. Do you mind if I take some time, think about it, talk to my co-founders and get you the answer to that question by the end of the day or, by tomorrow. That's fine, right? It's showing authenticity. Don't lie. Don't make something up on the spot. So how are we doing on time? I know we're kind of short
Yeah.
on time.
If you can show a couple of slides, Kara, and then I just need a couple minutes to talk about WCS membership and such. But if you want to take the next 3 to 4 minutes to wrap up your examples.
Perfect. I think we've all seen examples of these slides in practice. I grabbed a very common early pitch deck that maybe a lot of you've seen, which is the Airbnb's first pitch deck, to just use as an example so we could actually see some of this stuff in practice. But I'd much rather answer questions. Does anyone have any questions? Maybe I fly through this in like 2 minutes of like what it's doing well, and then we'll stop and answer some last questions. Okay, so first slide, title slide, logo. Immediately I see a statement, so I know what they're doing, right? It's very specific, it's very focused, it's easy. Maybe it's missing your name, your contact information, but it's really nice immediately to have that like one liner of what you're doing. So I have an anchor point before going into the problem. Like I said, I like to see a team slide right away, but that's a complete style thing. You don't need to. They went into the problem. And something to note about this slide, right? They raised money on this slide. They're a huge successful business now. It's not very visual, their slides. This slide is just three text, but it is, really specific on the problem. And it allows for kind of the voiceover. So you don't have to have you don't have to pay a designer like thousands and thousands of dollars to have a really amazing slide deck, especially for your first friends and family money. You just have to be convincing. The solution, very simple. You'll notice about this deck, it's just there's not too many words, there's not too much going on. And something about their solution that's good is that they're actually talking about the value prop to their customers, three very specific ways, right? Save money, make money, share culture. So you can instantly understand to the customers what the selling prop is going to be. Then they have market validation. They're looking at what's currently on the market, couchsurfing.com, Craigslist, that proves that there is a market. Then they're looking at market size. This is typical of seeing some type of breakdown with circles or pie charts for market size. There's a zillion templates out there too, and now there's like AI tools that help you make slides. So it's really more about the content. And then they're showing screenshots of their product, which is good, but it's not so detailed. They're not like spending 10 minutes telling me about the product. That's saved for a product demo. It's just, this is what our product looks like. Here's basically what you can do. Here's a very simple business model slide. This is how we're making money. We take 10% commission on each transaction. Here's our projections, and there's a lot of content on here in a very simple way. Adoption strategies, their go to market. We're going to do events, we're going to do partnerships, we're going to post on Craigslist. Here's a very brief competition. You'll see a few different ways of laying out competition. A chart with the X and Y axes of like picking sort of the main features and then mapping. That's really common. If you do that, you want to be in the upper right quadrant. That's where all the way at the top, right? So choose your X and Y based on things you can win on. And so you can show that your competitors are not there. So you can really skew this a lot of ways based on what you choose. They're doing affordability and online versus offline. I've also seen competition slides, maybe you've seen like the chart with the X's or the check marks next to different features. So you can show like that you have more things than the rest. There's a lot of ways to lay out competition, and there's a lot of ways to skew it to make it show that you're going to win. They've also outlined their very specific competitive advantages, which is good. Their team, and then they've included, press and user testimonials, which are when we go back to kind of like, how do you know that customers want this? So this is a little bit of like, this is how we know we've done an MVP and people, users are liking it, press are liking it. There's market traction out there, user feedback. This is like how we know that customers want what we're building. And then they have a financial, they called it financial, but this is essentially the ask. They're raising 500K angel round. And then this is what they're going to do with it. So very simple. I'm going to stop now. I think my LinkedIn that's just a QR code to my LinkedIn. So I think that's in the chat already. So I'm going to stop sharing and see if I know we're really at time now. So Nagashri, do you want to take
Yeah,
it?
what I can suggest is I can do a quick WCS plugin here. And then if people want to stay back a little bit, I don't know, Kara, if you have 5 more minutes to hang back and then answer some questions.
Sure.
So thanks, Jing. So thank you everyone for joining. Really, I want to reiterate the whole goal of WCS and the Entrepreneurship Committee is to bring you guys all the tools and information needed to become successful out there. We're rooting for you, and we want you to take on that, the pie of representing women on that stage out there. So the ways you can do it is become a WCS member. We have a QR code here, and go on to our website and sign up for this. You also can become a volunteer with our, Jing, if you can go through the next few slides quickly, is that you can be a volunteer with us and support our entrepreneurship committee, as well as at various events you can support us. And then on our website, you can buy swag and all. But I do want to say that some of the things that you guys have brought, that pitch competition, if you guys want to participate in our pitch competition, which is during SF Climate Week this year, the dates are yet to finalize, but anywhere between April 21st to 24th in San Francisco. The applications are out there. Please go ahead and apply if you would like to. I want to say we'll have more than 100 participants who arrive at Climate Week to come there. And then second is we have amazing VCs. Kara's part of SE Ventures. They were a judge last year, and they're giving you straight up feedback, as well as we spotlight you and you get prize pools for getting, those relationship with legal, with other, platforms to, talk about yourself. So with that, I'll stop the plug and let you guys ask some questions. Those who can stay back and ask questions, I appreciate it. But thank you everyone for supporting this community, and I love seeing you all. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, Kara.
Right.
Thank
Any
you
questions?
all. If anyone has questions, I'm happy to stay for a minute or two more, but thank you all for your time. And
Do you ladies have any questions?
Oh, I have one question about the competitive like matrix. I've heard conflicting things about putting actual other brand names on there versus like kind of categories of company, just because there's so many companies of certain categories. So maybe putting major players there. What do you recommend for putting other brand names on your?
I mean, I think you should, if it's, if it's like a specific, maybe if you're giving a generic pitch public or something, but if you're pitching to an investor, like it's good to show there's kind of two types of competition. There's direct competition and indirect competition. So sometimes it helps to show both. Indirect competition would be like if you're Airbnb, indirect competition might be Craigslist, right? Because it's like another place where people are finding random couches to sleep on or whatever it was in the beginning. They're not trying to do the exact same thing, but it's sort of a market competition. So when you're saying more generic, like there's these types of competitors. Like if we're trying to do this very specific thing, there's also these kind of adjacent markets that are currently taking some of that we're going to have to compete against and convince customers basically that we're a better solution than these adjacent markets. That would be indirect competition. Then there's direct competition, which is like there's these 5 other companies or startups that are doing very similar to what we're doing already. So I want to see the names of those because if it's not on the slide, I'm going to ask you, who are your competitors? And it's like, oops, you're on mute, Eleanor.
Even if it's not a major player, you want to see like these smaller startups that like could potentially build
Yeah.
towards what you're building, even if their value prop is a little bit like
I
vague.
want to know that you like really understand. Like, let's say, because first of all, remember, investors do very intense due diligence. So if whatever you're pitching, your investors are going to do their own market diligence. And
Okay.
so they're going to find they've probably already, done a market map of your space and they probably already know all of the players in that space. So that if you come and you say that there aren't any competitors or you don't like you're not actually actively researching and talking about those competitors, you might get hit with a question of like, how do you compare to XYZ startup that they've probably already seen their pitches too, right? Like they might have seen their pitches. So sometimes, especially in these like smaller markets with very focused climate investors, they
Mhm.
likely know all of the competition already and know those founders. And
Okay.
so they're going to want to see that you can speak intelligently about why you're different. And it's also okay if yeah, like I said, if there is a lot of similarities, you can say, yeah, you know what? This one is probably our most similar.
Mhm.
They have, they're targeting a XYZ, their product is similar for these reasons, but we're different for XYZ reason. Like this is still our defensible moat against this.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kara, for hanging back and answering questions. And we're really grateful for your continued support of women in entrepreneurship. And we look forward to having you at our pitch competition. So thank you
Definitely.
for such a valuable workshop.
Absolutely. So nice to meet everyone. Thank you for joining. And yeah, good luck.
Thank you
Thank
so
you all.
much.